Well, hello, boys and girls. It's when we feel like 8 o'clock. I'm Pearl of Wisdom, and you're listening to my NHL Pearls of Wisdom. Again, we get one of the finest young writers in the land, Anthony Cirelli. Here we call him Deli. You can find him in Deli Tweets. And I've been scoping out. We get Grace with Boric, now Deli. It is incredible. I'm telling you, man. Check out this guy's stuff. He knows his shit. He's great. We love him. He wanted to come on today, and we're going to talk about the Edmonton series and the Montreal series. Everybody wants to talk about that right now. We're going to talk a little bit of Tkachuk because there's some ongoing. That debate's I don't think going to stop on the hit and everything that went on with him and how he plays and all that kind of stuff like that. But first, Deli, what team do you want to start with? You want to go with the Pittsburgh series because you were saying maybe Pittsburgh wins a cup this year, right?
Yeah. I think we go with that first because that one I'm the most shocked by. I mean, it's coming up as we're recording. I think it's just about to start, and it's man, I'm surprised. I thought that Pittsburgh would come out firing, which they did, but they couldn't solve Price, and Price has really returned to his old self in this playoff series. And Montreal, I mean, growing up in a little bit of personal information, growing up in New England and watching a lot of the Canadiens and Bruins matchups as time went on, as I grew up, I should not be surprised that this is happening between Pittsburgh and Montreal. They've always been, no matter who's on the roster, such an opportunistic team, and they're so, I mean, their franchise history is just filled with moments of being the underdog, coming back and winning, and this is definitely an occasion like that. I mean, like I said, Price back to his old self, Crosby and Malkin. Crosby's producing, but Malkin isn't, and I think Price is a big reason for that. I think he's just in the Penguins' heads, and even more importantly, talking about kind of the opportunism that the Canadians are capable of, just feasting on the Schultz and Johnson pairing for the Penguins. That third defensive pairing is just. I think I read that that Johnson's -5 and Schultz is -4 in the last game alone or something. It was pretty brutal. I don't think it can be in the last game because they didn't score that many goals. But Johnson and Schultz are just getting beaten up and giving up a lot of opportunities and a lot of goals. And when a goalie like Murray isn't playing that well either, it's a battle of goaltenders, and Price is winning that battle right now. So I'm shocked. I really didn't think it was going to go this way, but you can see how it's happening.
It's funny, I remember just before that last game, my wife was kind of watching. She's sort of a Pittsburgh fan. I'm a Philly fan, so not lovely. She's from the Philippines, too. Didn't know anything about hockey and chose Pittsburgh. I'm like, oh, thanks. Thanks a lot. Anyway, but here, the announcer said, well, Murray's not the best goaltender in this series. And she goes, aw, poor Murray, she said. I'm like, I think we'll be all right. That's terrible to say, And I was like, well, it's true. What do you want to say? And I was like, that was kind of the reason why I was a little iffy about Pittsburgh because, first of all, Murray's been so inconsistent since he won those 2 cups. I don't know what happened with his head. And second, I got the impression, and this really gave me the impression so far in this series, that maybe even the team is not confident with Murray because they're playing back on their heels. Doesn't it seem like that to you?
Yeah, it does. There are moments where it really feels like Montreal's dictating the play more so than you would have thought with the skill level of their forward group. It pretty much pales in comparison to the Penguins, and a lot of the times the Canadians are bringing the play to the Penguins, and it's that style of play. It's hard to explain, but when you let's say look at a team like Columbus and what they did last year against Tampa Bay and what they're even doing this year, they're down 3 games to none, they're getting blown out of the water. They come back from a 3-goal deficit, and all of a sudden their momentum takes them all the way to the next round and almost to the conference finals. And Columbus is doing that same thing this year where they came back from 3 goals last night. Montreal is not the type of team when they're the underdog. Montreal is keep the game close. rely on Price and just get in the other team's heads. And that whole saying, don't let such and such a team hang around, applies to Montreal a lot, because they know how to just find that little mistake, and they're confident in their goaltender. Like you said, Pittsburgh doesn't look confident in Murray, and I think I read they're starting Jari. We should check on the check if that's true, but I think Jari's starting. So we'll see if the team plays any better in front of him. Yeah, he is starting.
I would have started Jari right from the beginning. I've said that several times on my podcast here. I just had more. I just think the team had more confidence in Jari. It was like, and we're going to get to the next game as well. I felt the same way about what Tippett did with Smith in that series. I just thought the team felt more confident with Koskinen. So with that in mind, I still think Pittsburgh can win this series. They have to be able to. I mean, you've got Crosby, Malkin. Like, come on, man. Come on. Look at that lineup and look at that lineup. You want to go? Do you want to go home knowing you lost to that lineup? I'm telling you, I don't.
And my head would short circuit if they were knocked out in the first round and got Lafreniere in the lottery. I would go nuts.
I don't know if it's them or the Rangers. Being a Philly fan, probably them, but I hate to see the Rangers get it too. So now you've got a 25% chance that two teams I least likely would want to get them are going to freaking get them. I don't want that. Don't want that. So let's go to the Edmonton series here with Chicago. Almost a similar thing to my book, but what do you think about that series? What's going on there?
I'm just impressed with how Chicago kind of has come back into form like 5 years ago. I mean, their players are really carrying them. Taves, I think, leads the Blackhawks in points and goals. DeBrincat there has got some assists. So Patrick Kane. So when we were talking with Joe back before the series started, I mean, Joe, I think, made the point that the Blackhawks' best players are going to have to be the ones that take them to the next round. They're not as deep a team as the Oilers, I don't think, in terms of young players. Although obviously DeBrincat, Kane, and Taves are huge, and Saad are huge advantages to have. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I think it maybe has to do with I'm discriminating a little bit more against age when they do really have deep, experienced players, but those players are really leading them to potentially a series win here against Edmonton, and I'm very impressed. I was having a conversation with another gentleman who is one of the rotating co-hosts on the Totally Offsides podcast that I do, and he was like, "I told you, don't sleep on Chicago. Playoff Chicago is way different than regular season Chicago." So, I mean, I think they deserve a lot of credit for the way they played.
Yeah, I look at that D line and I'm like, how is this happening? If I was Tippett in this sense, what bugged me about Edmonton, first of all, I want to mention Kirby Dach. And also, you mentioned Joe. That's Joe Bork, another amazing young hockey mind writer out there. But as far as Tippett, I with that D line the way it is, why not just go run and gun with them? You know what I mean? Like, I would. They got so much speed on that team. Just tell them, just give her. And let's see, 7-5, 8-5, or whatever. Edmonton's going to beat most teams that way. If unfortunately we have, I think, and maybe you can let me know if you see the same thing, we might have the same problem with Edmonton as we do in Pittsburgh. I don't know, maybe if the team really has that much confidence in either goaltender.
Yeah, I mean, neither of them are playing well. I mean, look at Mike Smith's goals against and save percentage for the series. I mean, his save percentage is under 800, not even under 900, which is atrocious. And like you said, it's a confidence thing. When you have someone behind you that you feel like can make up for some mistakes, you're even more confident than normal. So certainly scary. I mean, gripping their sticks a little tighter when you've got a sieve back there. And unfortunately, Smith and Koskinen are both looking like they're a little civvy lately. They'll say it. And Crawford deserves maybe not that much credit. I mean, he's what, 3 games started and he's 2 wins, 1 loss, and I'm looking at his stat line right here: 8.59 save percentage and 4.33 goals against, which is indicative of how many goals have been scored in that series. So you're right, clearly a run and gun type of play that's going on there that'll probably win it for whatever team embraces it first.
Yeah. It's a weird series, and I mention that because the Oilers also seem to get back on their heels when they're ahead. And to me, honestly, I might give Pittsburgh a little bit of a more grace for that because of the type of lineup they have, and the fact that they're playing with a team that really doesn't score well, so they could figure they could kind of shut it down, and they did so went too far. But Edmonton, there's no excuse for that whatsoever. That is not a team that wants to be playing on his heels at all. It totally obliterates the strength that they have. I would hope that a great coach like Tippett would have it so that doesn't happen again. So I'm going to lead you to the next question then. Out of the two, or both, or what have you, do you think either one or one of them, first of all, who has the best chance to come back out of the two? And do you think either one of them will come back, or prediction-wise, if I tied you down? Don't image that. Whatever.
No, I still think Pittsburgh has more of a chance to come back. I mean, compared to Edmonton, they just have the experience, the pedigree of multiple Stanley Cups, and players who I think had a bitter taste in their mouth when they got knocked out early last year, who are just not willing to let it happen this year. Looking at I don't have the game up in front of me right now, but there are already 4 shots on net with little over 7 minutes expired in the first period. The Canadians have 1, so it's going to be another kind of shooting gallery, really lopsided, I think, game that the Canadians are going to have to rely on Price to steal for them. And when we talk about Edmonton, I just don't know if Edmonton and their big guns and Draisaitl and McDavid have the experience to really. I mean, they're two of the best players in the league, but I don't know if they necessarily have the gravitas yet to say, like, come on guys, because if you look at a guy like Crosby or Malkin, you see what they've accomplished, and I mean, common sense dictates that you just listen to them, you trust what they have to say. But McDavid and Draisaitl, I mean, they had that one playoff appearance a few years ago, and they even kind of choked that one away against the Ducks. So I'm not convinced that they're going to come back, but I still am relatively confident in Pittsburgh.
Nice. Well said, buddy. I honestly, I don't know if I agree or disagree, honestly. That one has me confused. It really does. In fact, I didn't give my clients a bet on either game today. I just let it go. I was like, I don't know. I really think Pittsburgh will likely win, but after seeing when I see teams go back on their heels, they come off the betting line for me until I see otherwise. That's kind of the way I look at it. I saw 2 teams go back on their heels, and I don't like, until I see otherwise. I don't like taking a chance on them. So now let's get into some of the real meat discussion. Because it's going to cause a lot of people to turn their heads maybe or get upset or what have you. This is really a raging debate that's going on with Tkachuk, and it's even more than one incident with Tkachuk. It's simply the type of game that guy plays. So first of all, we'll go to the incident. Explain the incident from your perspective. What do you think Tkachuk did this anywhere near on purpose? And what do you think about Tkachuk's game as a whole in relation to this incident?
The incident happened. I mean, it's a huge difference watching it in real time versus slow motion and putting intent there. Real time, I don't think it was done intentionally. I think he went to go hit Scheifele, and then Scheifele's movement kind of brought him away from where Tkachuk was aiming, and rather than plow directly into the boards at full speed, he tried to slow up in that leg that he kind of kicked out to slow up caught Scheifele when Scheifele just unfortunately was at an awkward position. But I don't think he intentionally picked up his leg, especially at the speed he was going, and tried a little stomp on Scheifele. I don't think that was an intentional dirty play on the part of Tkachuk. But that's not to say I don't think he's. I mean, you mentioned he's got that edge to his game. His track record certainly dictates that he could be lumped in with some of the dirtier players in the league. I don't think he's been suspended at least twice, once for jabbing the stick in a game a couple years ago, and then for that little rivalry he's had with Doughty. I think he's right on the verge of being in that really dirty category with Marchand and Tom Wilson, and but those guys all have games that are more than just taking someone else off the ice with an injury. I mean, Marchand and I just mentioned Wilson, they can score. I mean, they contribute a lot. Marchand had 100 points last year, or almost 100 points. Like that's and they play better when they're playing with an edge. I mean, they're more engaged. They're more that they need that animosity to drive them. And I think Tkachuk is another player like that. I have such a hard time. I know his name is legendary in hockey between his dad and his younger brother, but I have a hard time pronouncing that. But I just think you can have. I mean, dirty players exist in hockey. That's a fact, and you can't really get rid of them, especially if they're so effective. So I guess if I had to say he was dirty, he is. But his game is so effective, both contribution wise and getting in opponents' heads. Like, you saw what he did to the Kings over the last few years, and what he did to the Oilers this year. Like, he's that guy you hate to play against, and if you're a fan, you hate that's playing against you. But if he's on your own team, you love him.
Yeah, and since we're talking about it, we might as well have a small note, at least about that Winnipeg series. It's too bad that Laine and Scheifele, that did happen, because it would have been a much better series. I actually had Winnipeg winning that series, but after Scheifele went down, there was no chance, I didn't think. But as far as Tkachuk being a dirty player, well, I mean, Clark. What about Clark? Mm-hmm. Is he a dirty player? Absolutely. Anybody who says otherwise, I'm sorry, you just like him. And that's what's happening with Matthew Tkachuk. He plays hockey. That's how we play hockey. Sorry, guys. That's how we play hockey. That's how it happens. We have guys on our team that do that sort of thing. They play on the edge. And to me, for a guy who plays on the edge, I don't think he's that dirty.
Yeah. And there is, I think what I was trying to spit out was the differentiation between a dirty player, or a guy who plays on the edge, crosses the line frequently, but contributes, or just a goon. Like, I think of goon, I think Raffi Torres, I think Matt Cook, I think Zach Ronaldo. Like, those guys, they barely belong in the league, and when their time is up quickly. I mean, not even necessarily fighters, although Ronaldo and they all fought a little bit, but they're so well known for their dirty hits and their dangerous plays that's where you're like, and you don't contribute offensively. I think that's the type of thing that drives me nuts more than someone who crosses the line while contributing points and needs to play that way in order to have that other side of their game engaged.
His father was on the edge quite a bit. He could score 40 goals and he could kick your ass, and he didn't strictly follow the rules, I can assure you of that. and taught his sons to balance that line on the other side of the line as closely as possible. So yes, if you can get away with it, you do it, and that's how they play. And that's the way the hockey has always been played. I don't think they would be good to take that out of the game. I think people like Tkachuk are very important to the game. And yeah, are people not going to like Matthew Tkachuk? Absolutely. We talked about another guy that, you write for Anaheim. You got Kessler there. Then there's guys that maybe Marchand. The problem with Marchand is he did it in such weaselly ways, like licking people and yeah. That was like, it's like he's like a weasel.
Yeah. Marchand is the like weird kid in class who, like, you went to school with, who would like just creep around and freak you out, and you're like, ugh, what do you do? Like, pick his nose and stick it at you, like that type of stuff.
He brings like lizards dead lizards in a jar to school.
That actually, I didn't bring dead lizards in a jar to school, but when I used to live like out in a very rural area, and I would bring like live snakes that I caught to school, and then I would take them out of a little terrarium, and they'd like pee on me and bite me, and the teachers would be like, "No more show and tell for you. You're banned." So that one came close, but they would be alive when I brought them in.
And I used to play a lot like Matthew Tkachuk, but I wasn't as tough as Matthew Tkachuk, so I got my ass kicked a lot. And I know how tough you got to be those kind of guys on a team. We have one in Cassian, but he's way tougher than I have. Cassian, you think Cassian doesn't bend the rules? You're good. He rocks in your head. You can go down pretty much every good team, except for, and by the way, Toronto doesn't have that guy, and that's why I took Columbus, because that is an attitude you need on your team. And if you can analytics me to death all you want, I don't care. You don't have that kind of attitude on your team that do anything to win attitude, you're probably not winning a cup. And I still will stand by that until I see a team like Toronto win a cup. Haven't seen one yet.
And that's a good point. I mean, even teams that don't win, I mean, we talk about the Ducks on occasion when I'm on here. The Ducks are terrible. Obviously, they're not in the playoff spot. They're not in the playoffs, but Nick Delorier is that guy for them. I mean, he'll throw. He had the most fighting majors in the whole league this year, and he had a natural hat trick. He scored a natural hat. I think the fastest hat trick in Ducks history. So those type of guys, even though, I mean, compared to Marchand and Tkachuk and Cassian and who I always forget the last guy who we had. In this kind of axis of evil, we'll call it. Wilson. I mean, Delorier doesn't contribute nearly as much as those. Sorry?
He's a guy you need.
He's a guy you need. He doesn't quite contribute as many points or at all as those guys I mentioned before, but Delorier was such an important factor to the Ducks when they were winning this year that you're right. It's a good point.
Stephen Ott is a good example.
Yep.
You know, guys like that from the past. I'm sure a lot of more would come. Yeah, there you go. There's another one. And those are guys that you got to have. The Edmonton Oilers had in their heyday had guys like that. Kenny Linseman in Philadelphia, half their lineup was like that. New York Islanders, even the Pittsburgh Penguins had the Rick Tocchet's, and they were guys. Rick Tocchet is a great coach right now, but I'll tell you, that guy was not dirty. He was dirty as hell. And that team was tough and dirty. Well, boys and girls, I think that's my full 42. I'm taking off for a hiking trip right now. And Deli, what are you doing? You got a podcast coming up. I can't wait.
Yeah, so we recorded it a week ago, so that one's out. I won't be hosting that one again for another couple weeks, but I'm working on an article for the Hockey Writers, and maybe coming up with I'm working on starting another podcast about. It'll be a surprise, but I think it'll be interesting. I think people